Good evening. I'm Melanie Risden with the Western Standard. Thanks for joining us this evening. And tonight we're going to be talking with Andy Lee, who is a citizen journalist. And Andy was sort of boots on the ground in Ottawa during the Freedom Convoy that was basically dismantled over the weekend. Andy has come home from Ottawa and has found her bank accounts have actually been frozen. Now we'll get into that. Andy, thanks for joining us. Just want to talk a little bit about what you do and why you were in Ottawa.
So I joined the convoy when it initially rolled into Ottawa, and that was before sort of anybody was covering it. It was still a fringe movement of a dozen truckers. So I thought that I would join up at the rally points and sort of, see for myself what was going on. And I saw the opposite of what was being displayed in MSM. It wasn't a small movement; it was a large movement. It was a very powerful movement. It was gaining traction. So I sort of ended up following them out to Medicine Hat, and then I came home and I flew back out to Ottawa. And I sort of met up with the main convoy as it rolled into Kingston about a month ago. So I was there for that. I spent some time with the convoy. I came home, and then I sort of went back out because I had heard that there was a large crackdown coming, which obviously happened. So I flew out the past weekend in Ottawa to sort of document that crackdown and try to fairly look at what sort of happened there. So I've just got home. My bank account was, for whatever reason, frozen. We don't know if that's related to sort of maybe my perceived involvement in the Freedom Convoy, but there's certainly some of that going around. So
yeah, there definitely is. We've got a few stories that we've been actually covering. Our reporter, we have a reporter, Amber, up in Edmonton, who just covered a story about a Saskatchewan farmer who donated $500 to the convoy and has since had his bank accounts frozen. Yeah. I also found, sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, it's so I also donated to the convoy. That was before they sort of transitioned over to the Give, Send, Go. I donated to the initial sort of movement. So
we've got I've got some tweets actually from some Conservative MPs speaking about constituents in their area that are also dealing with frozen bank accounts. Looks like Marilyn Gladu, Conservative MP for Serena Lambton, she tweeted that a lady in her constituency donated, or actually bought, a Freedom Convoy t-shirt for $20, and now her bank account is frozen. Also another tweet from Mark Strahl, MP out of Chilliwack, Hope, BC, tweeted about a single mom in Chilliwack, Brianne, who donated $50 to the convoy, like you, when this was not deemed an illegal act. And she too has had her bank accounts frozen. We're hearing more and more of these stories. So first of all, Andy, tell me a little bit about your citizen journalism. How long have you been doing that type of coverage?
So only for just over a year. So, I just sort of started during the lockdowns. I started sort of reporting. This isn't usually what I do. I don't usually cover really domestic affairs. I do more international affairs. I look at corporate foreign interference, in our government, and sort of, maybe foreign influence in our government. So that's sort of where I specialize. I did trigger one investigation in the House of Commons already. That was on the Chinese takeover of a Canadian lithium mine asset. Francois Philippe Champagne has been questioned in the House of Commons as to why that asset was sold off in direct contravention to a agreement that we signed with the United States government. That was the joint agreement of critical minerals. It was an agreement that we were to stockpile critical minerals. And so for whatever reason, we're allowing sort of mining assets to be sold off to Chinese state entities, and we're contravening our part of the bargain there. So that's sort of what I usually do. So this was outside of my my sort of comfort zone. But again, I wanted to cover it because I felt that it had the power to, become a very strong movement, and that there was a lot of backing, and that again, it was very much dismissed by mainstream media. And I think that that's part of the problem, is that because it was dismissed, nobody was really prepared for what happened when, a couple of thousand trucks rolled into Ottawa with 10,000 people behind them. That wasn't what was being reported. It was being reported that it was a fringe minority. It was a couple of trucks. These were unacceptable people with unacceptable views. And then obviously it ended up blowing up into something that, our government invoked an act that's never before been invoked, that's actually meant for wartime measures to quell this protest. So, it sort of defied everything that our government and a lot of legacy media said that it was going to be.
Right.
Against all odds. And so we saw this awful crackdown come down using this Emergency Measures Act, which sort of gives our government, extraordinary powers and extrajudicial powers. And so now we're seeing sort of those maybe extrajudicial powers being used in the form of seizing bank accounts. And whether my account was seized by the government, I can't say right now. I haven't been into my bank yet. I just got home. But we do know that some people's banking accounts are being seized. And it's a bit of a bizarre situation, because Chrystia Freeland went on camera and she very clearly said that the RCMP was giving banks names to freeze accounts, to freeze bank accounts, to stop this protest. But then the RCMP also issued a statement yesterday directly contravening that, saying that they had not done that. And now there's news coming out that they're working with bank accounts to unfreeze bank accounts. So it's very, very bizarre, because you've got, the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada saying that the RCMP is giving bank accounts names of individuals or, corporate donors or political donors to freeze their bank accounts and stop the influx of funds to this movement. And then you've got the RCMP saying something completely different and issuing a statement that's, contradicting the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. And now we've got, people coming out saying that, yes, bank accounts are being unfrozen. So it's like, why were these accounts frozen in the first place? Regardless if it was mine or if it was somebody else, why were they frozen in the first place? What authority did they act upon if it wasn't from the RCMP? And where did they get this information from? Is this from an illegally hacked donor list, right? Was this from the Give, Send, Go hacked list? And did the government give the banks authority to sort of freeze these accounts that now are apparently being unfrozen? I mean,
and even the concept of the hacking, of those accounts would typically be looked at as an illegal act.
Well, exactly.
So
I mean,
that's interesting as well.
And nobody actually, donated. Most of these people donated to the convoy when it was 100% legal to do so. These people didn't do anything illegal by donating.
Yeah, it sounds like the circumstances around the cases that I was talking about were such that this happened before the Emergencies Act was brought forward, and therefore donating $50 to a Freedom Convoy that you support or you believe in from sort of your side of the fence wasn't at the time constituted as something illegal. So you're correct in the sense that there is some extraordinary powers being given to the government right now, and some would argue an extraordinary overreach. But Andy, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about sort of how involved you were with the convoy. And the coverage of it. Tell me a little bit about the coverage of it. I know that you were saying that your Twitter was recently shut down. Let's talk about what kind of led up to that. What were you putting out on Twitter at the time?
Sure, sure. Well, like I said, my initial contact with the convoy was, I got on the CB radio when I was in Edmonton. I sort of followed them up to Calgary, and I went to the rally point because I wanted to see how big this was. I wanted to see if it was a dozen trucks or 100 trucks. And so I joined up with them there, and I started documenting what was going on, and you know, not. I mean, I did support what they were doing because they got some things done that I wanted. I want freedom, right? I want my kids to go to school without masks on. I'm vaccinated. I've supported our vaccination movement wholeheartedly the entire way. But does that mean that, I want to be constantly signing up for more inoculations and updating a vaccine passport so that I have freedom of movement? No, that's not what I signed up for, right? I made a personal medical decision. So there's a lot of ways that I got behind it. So I did support, but I also tried to be objective. Like, I was monitoring for how's the convoy traveling? Is it safe? Are they blocking emergency vehicles? Are they, obstructing traffic? Are they doing anything illegal as they sort of make their way to Ottawa? So I was really happy with the first leg and how actually the convoy traveled to Ottawa for what it was. It was a huge movement with big rigs. One semi has the ability to block off a street. So they weren't doing that until they hit Ottawa. They were very much just going from point A to point B, and trying to sort of participate in this protest. And so I was happy to go along with them. So yeah, and then my Twitter account got shut down. It got shut down on February 12th. So the last thing that sort of somebody sent me was that there was a convoy headed towards the British Columbia border. And so they sent me a picture of a truck that was heading there. It was a truck sort of that was painted in a military style, outfit, and had a Canadian flag draped across the front of it. And somebody said, this BC convoy is heading to shut down the border. So I tweeted that out. I said, the BC border is about to be shut down. And I'm not advocating for the BC border to be shut down. I'm just pointing out that the BC border is going to be shut down. And that was what happened. Mm-hmm. And so that locked my account. My account was suspended after that. Just simply for pointing out that this was going on, as far as I could tell. It was interesting because that truck ended up being involved. It did end up breaching police barricades that went over top of them. So I don't know if I was sort of, maybe taken as advocating for this sort of behavior. I was always very cooperative to police whenever I interacted with them, and I tried to interact with them frequently on a good basis. And tried to be sort of a liaison where there wasn't a liaison, because, nobody was talking to the convoy organizers and nobody was getting any mediators. And our mainstream legacy media, of course, chose to dismiss, villainize, dehumanize the people who were involved in this protest. So, instead of sort of being that bridge that they should have been, that's not the route that they chose, right? They chose to mock these people and not listen to them. And the media's job is to be a voice of the people. But that's not what we saw here. We saw that the media, it was a voice of the government.
Yeah, I coming from mainstream media, I can relate to that. For sure. One thing I was going to mention too, you had said your Twitter following had grown quite substantially over the last year. I think you had mentioned you were up to about 30,000 followers when your Twitter account got shut down.
Yes. Yeah.
And your handle was Hannah Bananas. And looks like even Jordan Peterson jumped to your defense when it looked like what you were tweeting out was being suppressed and censored. Looks like yes. Did you see that? Did you see him?
I did.
Jump to your defense a bit there.
Yes. So some people made some videos in my defense, and a lot of big accounts. Jordan Peterson was one of them. Lori Goldstein as well, from Sun, also said, why was she suspended? And of course, we haven't heard anything from Twitter yet. It's sort of funny. I put up something earlier saying, Twitter safety, and they say that our platform depends on transparency. And I was like, well, I've been asking you for over 10 days now. I email you every day as to why you took my account down, and you can't sort of answer me, or you won't answer me. So it's looking that it's very much their intention not to answer me at all. And I have a very ridiculous handle. I started out anonymously because I used to actually do some sort of work tracking Antifa and extremist groups and things like that. And I had some threats sort of put against me. There was a YouTube channel that was sort of created, dedicated to tracking me down. They did track me down, and they put up all my personal information. They put up information on my family. They put up information on my children. And so I sort of outed myself and said, okay, this is my real name. My handle stuck, even though it's ridiculous. It's a funny handle, but I never changed it.
Now, you had, speaking about sort of strange activity, not only did you mention that when you got home, you discovered your bank account was frozen, and I believe you said the bank had mentioned to you something about some fraudulent activity, but you still don't have answers. But you also mentioned that you're getting messages from hackers, or what's the circumstances there?
Yeah, so because my Twitter accounts, and because a lot of people liked my Twitter account, and I'm not really worried about the following, but I had a lot of research on there, and I was really fluid when I researched. Like, I would put up a tweet, and then I would think about it, and I would research it, and then I would end up getting these massive threads, and they would end up being my research. And so some of my threads were like 50, almost 60 threads long by the time I got to the end of it. So, a lot of people have a vested interest in seeing that account activated or not reactivated. So I've sort of had hackers on both sides contact me saying, if you give me X amount of dollars, and it's not like $100, it's thousands of dollars, I can reactivate your account. Or if you don't sort of pay me, I'll deactivate your account permanently. So if Twitter ever hears your appeal, they'll go to open your account and there'll be nothing left. So there's a really interesting seed underbelly going on there in the cyber world that I didn't really know existed. So I've got sort of these two sides. One side saying, I want to open your account. Another side saying, well, we want to close down your account permanently. If you don't pay us. And so obviously I don't have any funds because my funds are frozen. So I'm like, and I wouldn't pay you anyways, but I'm like, even if I wanted to, you have to understand my funds are all right now.
Have you heard anything else from the bank on that? I mean, I know you had said they had made a comment about fraudulent activity. Any other information at this point?
Yeah, so all I've got is if I call them, I just get a message saying, your account's been deactivated for fraudulent activity. And so I have to go into my bank. So I don't know why. I don't know if it's government related. I don't know if it's related to, maybe these hacking attempts that are being made. It could be either. I think regardless, again, it doesn't really matter. There's a lot of really strange things going on right now. And like I said, I think the big focus right now is that for whatever reason, there's a backtrack happening. And it looks like accounts that were frozen for whatever reason, and maybe mine's among them, and maybe it's not, are being unfrozen all of a sudden. And, that's sort of contravening what our government has said will happen, and what the Ottawa police chief said would happen as well. I interviewed him. I was there at his media scrum. I asked the question, I said, if protesters leave and go home at this point, because that's what you're asking them to do. You want them to go home. So I just said, if these people go home at this point, are you going to be sort of retroactively pursuing them and pressing charges? And what's your plan? And he was very clear that he intended to apply financial sanctions against any protesters who had left the protests retroactively. And that's pretty dangerous territory to fall into for any democracy, because these people did what you asked. They went home, right? You asked them to clear the streets. They left the streets. But you're saying that you're still going to sort of relentlessly pursue these people. You could financially sanction them, extrajudicially under this Emergency Act that's been enacted. So, I mean, and the government says, well, it's going to be 30 days, maybe, or it could be longer, or it could be less. Well, I mean, we hear this all the time. We've heard this, and it's sort of the ever-moving goalposts is why people are mobilizing. People don't want to hear maybe, or in the future, or if you do this, we'll do that. What people want is sort of a firm plans to, for our government to lay out, saying this is how we're going to move forward.
Well, and even to have, to have things set where once this is done, once this is achieved, we will reach this. And I even when we're speaking about, more than 2 years of a pandemic, that kept shifting and moving, and the goalposts kept changing, and there never really was an end to. There was, once you're vaccinated, this will be the circumstances, and we never really hit those circumstances. So I can understand people's frustration. Now, Andy, you were in Ottawa over the weekend, correct? When did you get back?
So I just got back late last night. So I arrived in Thursday. I went because I was suspecting with the enactment of the Emergency Act that there would be a big crackdown.
Tell us a bit about what you saw while you were there through the crackdown that started heavily Friday, but there were a few of the organizers that were taken into custody Thursday evening. Tell us a bit about what you saw while you were there.
Yeah, well, it was, it really sort of progressed. So Friday I went out. I talked to the officers a bit. I went right down that sort of, there's a line. I've got a video up. So there was a line of police and a line of protesters. And the police weren't armed at that point. They were very relaxed. And I actually walked down the middle of that line and, just showed sort of what this standoff looked like. And so that was day one. And so it was a little more relaxed, but the next day it was sort of batons were out.
Yeah, you had mentioned you were pepper sprayed at what point?
Yeah, and so I was pepper sprayed. So there's, there was sort of people put up a viral video, and that was when the mounted police sort of took their horses through the crowd, and some people were trampled and some people were injured. So I was recording that at the time, and then I was unfortunately pepper sprayed, and I had to sort of pull away. But we do know that was sort of a shameful moment. There's the RCMP chat that came out where people say that some of the RCMP unfortunately have said that was awesome, right? Mm-hmm. They said that was really awesome what you did with the horses. Watching that.
And they needed to, I believe I saw something in there, they needed to master that maneuver or something along those lines. I think some disturbing communication between officers in that leaked conversation for sure. We do have that on our website as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and so having witnessed that, I can say it was not awesome. It caused a stampede. It caused panic. I think that was the real turning point between the crowd and the people, because that was one of there was some footage of arrests where there was some kneeing and maybe some excessive police force used, police brutality perhaps, and some people taken away at gunpoint. So I think that that was really the turning point where the crowd turned against the police, because, they had sort of lashed out and, not just use normal advancement techniques where you sort of put pressure on. And that's a very standard technique is, you form a line and you slowly put pressure on the crowd and get them to move back. But this was using, I mean, what's a horse? I mean, a horse is like using a weapon, right? A very, very powerful, creature that can do a lot of damage and did do a lot of damage and hurt people. And,
Well, and it's created a lot of division as well, even with the responses, because I've seen responses that have said, the RCMP needs to be investigated for this. This is a tragedy. This is, a massive overreach of power. But then you've got the other people who say, sort of tweet their responses like they shouldn't have been there. They should have left when they were told to. So it again just keeps creating and contributing to that real divide in our communities and with people supporting the convoy and what the convoy was aiming to achieve. I've heard a lot of people reference it as an anti-vax protest when I've heard from many who were affiliated or participating, and they are fully vaxxed. They're not anti-vax at all. They're more pro-freedom. So it's kind of, it's created a very strange perception. I think you're right. A lot of people struggle to see the truth and to hear the truth when it comes to what is being heavily reported. And so, independent journalists such as yourselves and media that work free of the government funding, I think it's imperative right now, because it's an accountability piece that I think has been lacking in the legacy media arena for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, it was really sad to sort of to be witnessing one thing and to see, our mainstream media reporting a completely different thing. Like, they had a lot of suspicion over one tent, and this was sort of the operations tent, and it was supposed to be stockpiling cans of gas and things like that. Well, I mean, I just walked up to the tent and walked in, and there was no jerry cans. It was a DJ booth. Right? And so there was a lot of suspicion, and there was photographs of police sort of helping them set up this tent, this operations tent. Well, I mean, this was just sort of the main stage where speakers would come up and where they would play music at night. So it was sort of it was bizarre to see, live sort of this, this narrative that's pushed out. Basically, these are direct PMO talking points. And to witness something completely different on the ground. And I mean, were there mischievous characters? Was there bad characters? Was there rowdy activity? Yeah, absolutely. It was a massive street party, right? There were firecrackers going off in the streets. There were people drinking, absolutely. All that happened. But I mean, did I witness anything that was legitimately violent until police moved in? No, like I really didn't see anything that was, I would say, that made me feel unsafe until those last days. And yeah, I was in the crowd, I got pepper sprayed for videotaping. I had, sort of a police officer wearing a gas mask, waving a baton in my face. And I was within the red zone as well. I was staying within the red zone. So that's the zone that was all chained off, right? And, the last day I didn't even come out of my hotel room because people were reporting that if you go out, you're not allowed to take pictures and things. So the last time I went out was Sunday. During the day I went out. I didn't go out at all Monday until I left my hotel and I asked to leave sort of the red zone. But I mean, that night when I went into my hotel, like I was escorted out of that red zone by, two police with guns. And I was told I couldn't take any pictures of what was going on in that secured perimeter. So I mean, that's pretty wild. I mean, I've got credentials, right? Like I've got a free press pass. I'm just like, can you point me to the nearest exit, right? And they're like, no, 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 we have to escort you out of this. You're in a secured area, right? So, and I mean, is this what's sort of in the future of Canada? At what point are we going to open up Parliament Hill, right? And is this going to be used against future protests? I mean, we have a protest building. We've got, Freedom March. We've got the soldier who's marching across Canada right now.
Yes, we do. We're going to be covering that for sure.
Yeah, and I think he's going to get a lot of support behind him. And I think that he's going to end up getting a network, and probably people are going to end up crowdfunding his movement. And a lot of people who got behind the trucker convoy are probably going to get behind this soldier who's decided to march across Canada for freedom. So it's like, is this emergency act going to be used against this individual as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have some coverage in store for sure. Of how things are going to roll out with these Emergencies Act, that's going to be affecting each and every one of us in this country until it's lifted. Andy, what's next for you then? Are you going to continue with your support of these movements? What's next for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, they can't really do anything else, right? I mean, I've been deplatformed. Maybe my bank accounts have been seized in sort of retribution. So, I mean, at this point, unless they're going to come and arrest me, as they say that they're going to retroactively do for supporters, and that's a very broad sort of statement to put out. There's no definition as to what involvement or participants are at this point. So, do I fall under that? I don't know, right? Am I going to get a call or a knock on my door? Potentially. But I mean, I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing. I'm not going to stop, or I'm not going to be sort of cower in the face of this regardless. And I do intend to go and meet up with the soldier and talk to him as he makes his way to Ottawa, and get his story, and maybe that's going to be the next movement, right? And is the government going to try to shut it down? Well, we'll see, right?
Where do you put your coverage, Andy? Where are your stories? Where can people find you?
Because Twitter shut me down, I opened a Getter account, so all my stuff is on my Getter right now. I'm at the Andy Lee. My name is the real Andy Lee, because there was some fake accounts that have popped up under my name. So we've got to get this shut down. And I just have a website. It's called andyleevna.com. I've got some stories on sort of corporate and foreign malfeasance within our government. Some sort of Chinese Communist Party influence in our government is what I specialize in. I'm married a Hong Konger. My children are Chinese. So I have I've got a lot invested, in hoping to see a free China, and free Hong Kong and free Taiwan and things like that. So, that sort of topic is really personally close to my heart, because of course what I've reported means that I can probably no longer safely visit Hong Kong or China as I used to, because of what I sort of uncovered. So that's really sad that I can never take my children to see, sort of where they came from. But that's the state. So that's where you guys can find me, and I'm going to keep on writing, and I'll keep on reporting. We'll see what Twitter has to say. There's still an appeal in the works, and maybe they'll do the right thing and unleash my account, right?
Yeah, well, I guess we will see. Maybe keep me posted. Let me know, and let me know when you get a little bit more information into what's happened with your accounts and why they've been frozen. Maybe we'll touch base with you again here soon, Andy. And thanks very much for joining me and us and filling us in on some of those last days in Ottawa. and just sort of speaking to your experience as a citizen journalist covering this, and perhaps the ramifications that you're facing for doing so. But let's hope that's not going to be the case, and at least not very long lived.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, I think we're seeing them backtrack, right? They're very quickly saying that they're unfreezing accounts. So it didn't take them very long to roll back those measures. So, popular opinion is that I'm going to go into my bank and show my ID, and my account will miraculously be unlocked without explanation.
I hope so. Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see. I'm going to try to get in there. I've got like about an hour to get in there before it closes. So thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks for joining us. That's Andy Lee. She's a citizen journalist, and we were just checking in on her experience in Ottawa, covering the convoy, the protests that were happening there over this last weekend. And thanks for joining us. We will obviously have more coming with how the Emergencies Act is going to unfold in Canada. And just keep it here. We'll have all the news for you.
Algodex is owned by Algonaut. This is great new technology just coming online now in the digital currency world. Algodex is a great way for you to use the digital currency Algorand in your day-to-day transactions. Can you imagine a world where we don't have to buy a cup of coffee using the federal dollar? And you don't even have to use the American federal dollar. You don't have to use the euro or the pound sterling. You can use real money, digital currencies that are not at the beck and call of governments and inflation. The Algodex is making digital currencies usable on a day-to-day basis.